Francis Kéré becomes the first African to win the Pritzker Prize for Architecture in 2022. Francis Kéré left his family home at the age of 7 to attend school since his village, Gano in Burkina Faso, lacked one. 13 years later, he traveled to Germany on a carpenter scholarship with the hope of one day returning home to construct classrooms that did not exist at the time. Kéré accomplished this by training as an architect and completing his first project, the Gano Primary School, in 2001. The project served as a catapult for his career and continues to shape his ethos to this day. After further transforming his community and other communities throughout Africa with his socially conscious designs, the 56-year-old has been hailed one of the profession's greats. The organizers of the Pritzker Prize, frequently nicknamed the Nobel of Architecture, announced Kéré as the prize 2022 laureate on Tuesday. Kéré became the first African architect to win the award in its 43-year history with a portfolio mostly comprised of schools, health centers, and community facilities. Projects that might have been judged too modest for a prize that has traditionally awarded the designers of famous structures. He acknowledged his accomplishment to his community in Gando in an interview with CNN shortly after learning of the news. "This is not a self-congratulatory award," he explained over the phone from Berlin, Germany, where his firm, Kéré Architecture, is based. "Without the fortitude to return home and convince my family and friends to accompany me on the road to create the school that started my career, none of this would have been possible." Kéré envisions a vision of architecture that simultaneously supports communities and answers to the climate issue by casting mud like concrete and favoring indigenous materials above foreign ones. As such, Tuesday's Pritzker Prize announcement represents a vote of confidence, not only for him, but for vernacular architecture as a whole, a phrase that refers to designs that are directly responsive to local climates, materials, and construction traditions. Though Kéré has now developed larger buildings, such as large-scale universities and 2 national legislatures, his methodology is rooted in the Gando ideals. After raising funding for the school from abroad, the architect returned to his village with ideas for a 5,600 square foot contemporary and ecological building. Given the village's lack of electricity and air conditioning, he proposed strategically positioned windows that enable indirect sunlight to penetrate while generating airflow for natural ventilation. Despite his close collaboration with local artisans, Kéré says he encountered pushback to his material selection. The use of traditional clay bricks, which provide natural cooling even when reinforced with concrete, was not universally embraced by villagers, who believed the construction would not weather the wet season as well as glass and steel. The villagers' proclivity for conflating modern materials and concepts of development has been a source of frustration for the architect throughout his career. "There is still an impression that everything indigenous is primitive," he explained. "Assume that 90% of people in Burkina Faso utilize clay, but view it as a poor man's substance. As a result, when individuals have more money to spend, they hunt for alternative materials. At times, the Western society and the way it communicates creates the illusion that things in the West are the finest, and they are viewed as the best by others, despite the fact that indigenous materials can help solve the climate issue and are our best socioeconomic option. Development: the more indigenous resources you employ, the more effectively you can support the local economy and develop indigenous knowledge, which also instills pride in people." Community empowerment. Since completing his breakthrough project in Gando 2 decades ago, Kéré has implemented plans for a village library, teacher housing, and a 2008 addition that greatly enlarged the school's capacity. Additionally, he has adapted his technique to other situations in Burkina Faso, where he has completed nearly a dozen projects, and throughout the continent, from Senegal to Uganda, Togo to Sudan. Kéré used existing baobab trees, shrubs, and indigenous grasses into his design for the Benga Riverside residential community in Mozambique, providing shade and sheltering houses from dry winds. Meanwhile, his curvilinear SKFRTL Children Learning Center in Kenya was constructed entirely of compressed earth bricks manufactured on site. In each case, his work is equally concerned with process as it is with design. Collaboration with local artisans not only transmits ownership of community structures, but also helps develop vocational skills that may be used to produce future revenue, Kéré explained. As the Pritzker Prize jury, chaired by 2016 winner Alejandro Aravena, put it in its citation for Kéré, He understands from within that architecture is not about the object but the purpose, not the outcome but the process. Kéré's carpentry training qualifies him as a builder as well as an architect. Handcrafting and cutting or assembling materials intrigued me, he explained, and I attempted, albeit unconsciously, to achieve the same with my architecture. Nonetheless, he sees a growing schism between design and construction, arguing that many contemporary architects are disconnected from the procedures that bring their concepts to reality. There is a significant divide, Kéré stated. You have people building and influencing our reality while sitting in an office with a computer. This is not the best strategy. If you own a large architecture firm, it's a good idea to find a means to provide experience on construction sites to your employees. It is conceivable. It does not require a miracle, and we must bear in mind that young professionals who spend time on building sites and observe how materials are assembled will approach design differently than those who design just on their computers. Increasing profile. While Kéré's attitude is inherently practical, he is fully aware of the symbolic and visual identity's potency. Consider his recently finished Startup Lions campus, a teaching center in northeast Kenya whose unusual towers serve as both ventilation and a nod to the region's termite mounds, anchoring the structure to its environment. Then there was the tree-inspired pavilion he designed for London's Serpentine Galleries, which commissions a temporary display from a major international architect each year. The conceptual creation, which is part of a growing body of Kéré's work outside of Africa, brought together several of the ideas that underpin his work, from perforated wooden blocks that allowed for natural air circulation to a rain-collecting canopy that alluded to the challenges of water scarcity. Kéré's expanding international recognition has resulted in an increase in commissions for enormous works. Following the destruction of Burkina Faso's National Assembly in 2014 due to civil upheaval, the architect was commissioned to design a successor in the country's capital, Ouagadougou. The tiered facade of his pyramidal design provides both public space and a message of democratic openness, albeit the project is currently on hold following January's coup d'etat. However, construction of another Kéré's National Assembly is ongoing in neighboring Benin. As with his Serpentine Pavilion, the parliament's top-heavy structure was inspired by trees, in this case, West Africa's palaver tree, and their role as traditional meeting places, with the main volume bursting out from a hollow trunk. Kéré stated that the challenge in both cases was to produce distinctly African manifestations of democracy, memory, and identity. While the architect's national-scale projects are significantly larger than his schools and health centers, his style is anchored in localism. How do you make a project embody the spirit of a nation? From village to nation-state, one must explore across the land and inquire, where do you have indigenous and natural stone? And then we seek it out in order to not steal a style from somewhere else. This is how I am attempting to transfer the work I began in Ghana into structures evoking national pride. Kéré will be officially declared the Pritzker laureate at an event later this year in London. As has been the case in the past, he will get a $100,000 grant and a bronze medal.